Good morning and welcome to retired Colonel Chris Wyatt. Privileged to have you here, sir. Thank you very much for making time for us.
Isak, it's my pleasure. Thank you very. I'd say my plaisir, but people always give me a hard time because that's a French pronunciation, not an Afrikaans. And ek praat nie Afrikaans nie, maar ek verstaan. So I have to be careful when I say that because I always mess that up. I always get harassed by Afrikaans speakers for that. But thank you for having me. It's a pleasure. I've seen your channel growing from a distance, and occasionally I tune in. And I don't understand everything, but I usually keep up. But I don't watch it enough, so my apologies for that. Maybe I'll have to send more people your way.
Thank you very much, Chris. The reason I want to talk to you is the executive order of President Donald Trump, which at first said that Afrikaners will get refugee status in America. I see there's a nuanced statement out that says minority groups. Um, uh, but uh, but the fact is still that this is quite a big thing for in South Africa, and at the moment it's creating all sorts of divisions and problems. Let's talk about that. Why do you think all of a sudden is Afrikaners in South Africa so important to the president of America?
I don't think they are so important to the president of America. And I think that a lot of false attribution is being done here, particularly by ANC politicians and their fellow travelers in the legacy media in South Africa and here in the West. This is really about South Africa's breaking a covenant between the United States and South Africa, one which the ANC has been breaking for 25 years or more. They have been given a free pass by successive administrations to go about their business and transform and lead South Africa into a new world. But unfortunately, the ANC has become a rapacious kleptocracy like most liberation movements, unable to govern justly and fairly. So this is not a consequence of the expropriation without compensation, which is what the narrative is today. They're also trying to lay it on the International Court of Justice case, the genocide case, the bogus genocide case against Israel. Those are factors, and they're big factors. And the only reason EWC plays so prominently, in my view, is because I strongly believe that when Ramaphosa had a phone call with President Trump to congratulate him right after he was sworn in, that was the 20th. On the 23rd of January, Ramaphosa, having not mentioned to Trump that he was going to sign this into legislation, into law, went and made a big fanfare at Davos. After telling the world that South Africa was open for business, he signed a law enacting expropriation without compensation. And, they can deny it all they want and say it's not without compensation. But why do you call it that? And why did you have to put a law in when you already have Section 25 of the Constitution, which forces you to do it with compensation that's just and equitable? So it's much more than this. If we go back to April of last year, a bipartisan House produced a bill to sanction South Africa, to review our relationship because of a series of slights, the Lady R, the cozy relationship with Tehran, with Moscow, not admonishing Russia for its invasion of Ukraine, also its close ties to Beijing, its involvement in BRICS and BRICS currency. There's a whole host of grievances the United States has had, and the Bush administration, the Obama administration, the Trump administration, and the Biden administration looked the other way while the ANC wrote 142 laws, racially discriminatory, and has practiced things that are in discord with our arrangement. We have given South Africa duty-free access to our marketplace through the Africa Growth and Opportunity Act, and sacrosanct, key to that agreement is respect for private property rights, which in my view, South Africa has not been eligible for since this bill was introduced in 2018. And I've been telling people that, but nobody's listening. And now the chickens have come home to roost.
What now? What does it entail? Who's going to benefit? Who's going to be on the bad side of this going forward from here?
Well, it's a good question, Isak. And I caution the African National Congress, who doesn't listen to me, obviously. I think they listen to some of my broadcasts, but I don't think they listen to me. I caution them to stop poking the bear. Since the past week has occurred, the State of the Nation address happened on Thursday. What's the first thing out of Ramaphosa's mouth? We will not be bullied. Okay, well, thank you for that insult to Donald Trump in America. You think he wasn't paying attention to that? Then on Friday, South Africa joins 83 other countries to lodge a protest that Donald Trump has sanctioned the International Criminal Court, a body we're not a signatory to. And so they've sanctioned the court members. And so they decide to insult us by joining that and protesting America's action. You would think that when you're in a difficult diplomatic position with a partner, friend, or ally, that you would be more humble, but not the ANC. On Saturday, they started a propaganda blitz of disinformation and misinformation throughout the media with lies about what's going on. We keep hearing about the United States intruding in South Africa's affairs. This is comical on its face, Isaac. The very fact that the United States is no longer going to give handouts to South Africa means we're not involved in your affairs. Do what you want. And as far as the refugee resettlement, whether it's for Afrikaners or minorities, that's our business. It's our business. We take refugees in from Myanmar, from China, from Venezuela, from Haiti, from all over the world, on our terms. That's ours. We allow those people to come here. It has nothing to do with your internal dynamics. And if you quit poking us in the eye, then maybe it wouldn't have come to this, the ANC I'm talking about. So what I think is going to happen going forward, well, I did a video today, a very bold prediction, which almost nobody's watched. I don't know if the wave is over for the Trump time because I've got less viewers in this video. But on that video, I said, next up, suspension from AGOA. That will have a devastating impact for the wine industry, for automobile parts manufacturers in South Africa, and a host of others, including mineral exporters, where we buy $430 million worth of South African minerals every year, which we can get mostly elsewhere, except for maybe platinum. The rest of it's not an issue. But I think that the relationship is going to continue to sour. And the ANC seems to think they hold all the cards. They don't hold any cards. And look, this is not an offense to South Africans. Don't take offense. And I say this all the time. And people who know me know I have a deep affection for South Africa and for South Africans. And I promote the country all the time. But geopolitically, South Africa doesn't matter. It's a rounding error. This is not 1975 when the world depended on South Africa's gold or chrome or things like that. The world has changed. And South Africa's not even a major gold producer. It's ninth last year. Ninth in global gold production in 2024. China is the world's largest gold producer. The United States outproduces South Africa gold by a factor of 2 to 1. So it's not a major producer there. The sea lanes around Cape Town don't matter for the most part as long as the Suez Canal remains open. If it gets shut down, like when the ship crashed, then they're important. But the ports in South Africa are rated the worst on the planet by the people that rate ports. That's horrible. And so nobody wants to stop there. The port handling facilities, the cargo containers, they're just terrible. So look, South Africa doesn't hold any cards. And if the ANC wants to keep poking the bear, they're going to find out the hard way that Donald Trump isn't messing around. If the ANC thinks that South Africa won't get sanctions because they're pissing Donald Trump off, let me just point out a few things, and then I'll stop here because I've been talking for a bit. Panama Canal Zone, the Belt and Road Initiative. China is no longer involved because we threatened sanctions. Mexico refused to take their criminal alien invader nationals back into their country. We threatened 25% tariffs. They've sent 10,000 National Guard troops to the border to patrol it, and they set up camps to repatriate their nationals. Canada, we threatened tariffs against them, and Justin Trudeau resigned. Gaza, Donald Trump talked about taking over Gaza, and now the whole world's talking about a peace settlement there because they don't want to go crazy and let the United States control Gaza, so they're willing to talk about other things. And we've also we threatened sanctions on Colombia. They thought they would play games with us after approving our military flights to fly there. En route, they said, nope, the president intervened, said, nope, they can't. And he had personally approved that, said, no, you can't come here, trying to embarrass the United States. Well, Donald Trump was on the golf course. He pulls out his mobile phone. He sends a message off, 25% tariffs, no visas for diplomats, no visas for nationals. The borders are closed to Colombia. Next week, if they don't back down, it's 50% tariffs. Within 1 hour, Colombia took the stuff. So if the ANC wants to play hardball and play chicken, bring it on. Now, I'm not saying that in an antagonistic fashion, Zach. I hope you appreciate that. I'm just making the point that they are messing with the wrong guy. And that's the bottom line. Things are going to get ugly.
I understand your point of South Africa not really being important. But what I mean by that is why all of a sudden making a point about South Africa and how did Afrikaners came onto the radar of the President of the United States?
Well, the Afrikaners have been on the president's radar for a long time because Trump used to watch Tucker Carlson when he was on Fox News. We know this to be true. And AfriForum came to D.C. trying to lobby the president. They couldn't get to the president. And this isn't his first term, but they did get on Tucker Carlson, courtesy of a couple Republican politicians who knew Tucker. And so they got on. Ansel Hutz went on there and talked about the discrimination against Afrikaners and farm murders and things like that. And so it got in the press, and Trump did a tweet, which it wasn't a very well-informed tweet. And it got the South African politicians all upset. And Cyril put his foot in his mouth. I don't know what Donald Trump cares about South Africa. He's never been here. He can keep his America. Stay out of South Africa. You think that's not playing very well now? Oh, my goodness. Stupid stuff. So Trump already knew about this. And of course, Elon Musk comes from South Africa. He's familiar with the situation there. So all of this is playing around. But the reason, the proximate cause, and the reason I say that my analysis is probably spot on is the following. Trump came in office on January 20th. He signed a slew of executive orders. None of them addressed South Africa. They weren't mentioned. South Africa wasn't mentioned, despite all the stuff, the Lady R, the Cuba, the Tehran, the Gaza, none of that, nothing. Okay. But remember, last year, Congress was trying to pass a law to sanction South Africa and to review the relationship. But it failed because Biden wouldn't sign it and the Democrats control the Senate. So it died. But that is back on the table. You've got Ted Cruz, Marsha Blackburn, plus some prominent Democrats who are pushing for South Africa to have a day of reckoning and behave themselves from the U.S. perspective. So the reason, in my view, this came about when it did is, as I said, Cyril Ramaphosa had a phone call with Donald Trump, like many world leaders. Congratulations, President Trump, on coming back in office. Best wishes, a great relationship, United States and South Africa. He did mention that he was about to sign this piece of legislation, which abrogates South Africa's access to the Africa Growth and Opportunity Act. And it's also in clear violation of the Declaration of Human Rights, of which South Africa is a signatory. It's in clear violation of Section 25 of the South African Constitution. And it's clearly meant to distort the land issue. And so Trump doesn't like being blindsided. And I believe what's strong to happen here is that he pissed Trump off. I mean, the courtesy, Ramaphosa is going around now talking about, well, we were blindsided. It'd be nice if we were informed. That's what friends do. You send diplomatic channels. Yeah, this is the same Durko that we spent 7 months or 5 months trying to get them to tell us what was going on with the Lady R. Ambassador Brigitte privately, politely, diplomatic, approached Durko and asked them over and over again, what's going on with Lady R? Why aren't you telling us about that? That ship was sanctioned. We told you it was sanctioned. It had stuff there. It's not a good look. Can you tell us about it? And they rebuffed us. They ignored us for 5 months. Then Brigitte went in the press and suddenly, oh no, we're appointing commission. And, they started paying attention. So the United States knows full well what was on that ship. Trust me. I have no doubt they know what was on it, what wasn't on the ship. And Ruben Brigitte is a very political creature. He was my boss in Ethiopia at the U.S. mission to the African Union. He is a very smart and articulate gentleman, and he also is a very political creature who I suspect aspires to be a senator or governor at some point in his lifetime. He would not have put his political credibility on the line by making a foolish statement that South Africa is shipping arms or buying arms. So all of that plays a role. But I think ultimately the proximate cause was Cyril was disrespectful and rude to Trump, and Trump said, that's it. They're already on the radar. Now it's time to spank them. Everyone says Elon Musk. I bet you dollars and donuts it's not Elon Musk. They've got bigger issues to fry than South Africa. But South Africa, and what's been a response? Every single day, another insult or affront to America. If they just shut up and calm down, maybe this could come back from the brink. But in the meantime, they're propaganda machines, even here in the States. Former DA, federal chair, back here in the States, teaching at Brown University, writes an insulting and, dare I say, borderline racist statement about U.S. foreign policy, attacking Trump and Musk over the situation. It's our money. In fact, we don't even have the money to suck. The United States spent $2 trillion more last year than we took in. So we went $2 trillion in deficit last year so we could give South Africa $500 million. And for those who are complaining about the humanitarian aspect about it, the president's emergency program for AIDS relief was a 5-year program. It's now 22 years old, and we spent $130 billion. It's the biggest aid program in the world in the history, even bigger than the Marshall Plan. Countries have had 22 years to take responsibility for that. South Africa still leaves a big chunk of that on the table for the United States to handle. Why? So the ANC can spend money elsewhere or put it in their pocket. So look, the gravy train's over. It can get worse. The aid could come back in the future, but right now, all they're doing is pissing off Trump and pissing off the Americans. And now we've got Julius Malema in a Twitter war with Elon Musk. That's entertaining too.
Listen, tell us what can people that wants to use the opportunity expect from now on? What is it like to be a refugee in America?
Well, if you're going to be a refugee, there aren't many better places to go. I mean, life is pretty generous for a refugee. It's very different than being an immigrant where you have to support yourself and you have to go through a lot of hoops to get here and prove that you've got skills and yada, 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 this and that, and you're not a criminal record. Refugee status is very, very different. We take in the tired, the poor, the dirty, the unclean, the PhDs, the carpet cleaners, the 92-year-olds, the 2-year-olds. You just have to have a genuine persecution or fear of persecution based on a set of criteria. It's very different than asylum seeking as well. Asylum is a very different situation. Asylum seekers are not allowed to work by law. And so this is what's it like to be a refugee in America? Well, I don't know many refugees. Most of the people that I know that are foreign nationals in this country are immigrants, legal immigrants who've come here, or I've known a few asylum seekers because of their status, because of my role in the government, the military, and things I got involved in. But beyond that, I can't tell you what to expect because the U.S. refugee admissions policy program is a matter of law. It exists. But on the 20th of January, Trump suspended. That's another thing I should mention is because Trump suspended that program. No refugees could come to America from January 20th when he came in office until he put this executive order out Friday night in which he directed Afrikaners who are suffering racial discrimination can be admitted. And he told the Secretary of State and the Secretary of Homeland Security, the two cabinet positions involved, to create basically an expedite or prioritize a program to get those people here. So what can they expect? If you come to America, typically these programs, and first off, let me state this. I'm heartsore that it's come to this, that the president felt the need to offer this to Afrikaners or to minority South Africans. South Africans love their country by and large, but too many South Africans have been discriminated against in a fashion that's based solely on their skin color, denied occupations, denied employment, denied education. You get, a matric of the highest levels and you can't even get in UCT because your skin color is wrong. This is just a replay of what the National Party did during the apartheid era. It's just that it's flipped the other direction and it's persecuting a group of people who are on top of that demonized as a minority and then demonized because they're all presumed to be privileged and elite, which is all crock. And we're not all billionaires, white folks. I don't think people notice that, especially not South Africans. So what can they expect? Well, with these programs, there'll be a set of rules that comes with it and eligibility criteria, which have be pretty easy to establish here. And I can give you a guess what some of that would be. But oftentimes they pay for flights. You can sometimes usually bring your pets. You can bring your entire family typically if you're suffering persecution or you fear persecution. That's the key distinction here. The law allows for people who fear persecution. So if you're a gay person in Jordan and you're afraid you're going to be thrown off of roofs, you can apply for refugee status and you probably get granted that based on the U.S.'s policy about homosexuality. So sometimes what usually happens with refugees, because it's a resettlement program, they send you to a place in America where they help you get resettled, help you find accommodation, they'll help you with job placement, and there's usually some money and stipends that come along with that for up to a period of 1 year. And that's how it works. You're given special status, a sort of like a resident visa, not a green card as such, but a refugee green card, which is good. A lot of South Africans are asking me on my program, so what if the next administration revokes it? Well, Liberians came here in 1990, running away from the Civil War. They were granted temporary refugee status under a special program that was passed in legislation. That expired 3 years later. They're still here and won't go home. Every time it comes up, they lobby, and then Congress passes an extension. They get to stay here. And even if you were going to have somebody try to revoke that status, it's very hard to send people back. Refugees never go home, Isaac. They never go home. 98% of refugees, once they're in your country, they're not refugees, they're immigrants. They never go home. They just don't go home. And a lot of reasons for it. If they're young, they get somewhere, they meet someone, or they get comfortable. They're building their life. They're getting their first job. They're buying their first car, the first home. They're having kids or getting married. And then older people, they're just too old to move again. They've had enough of it. So refugees never go home. And that's the bottom line. The Liberians have been here for 32 years.
Chris, just a last question. You mentioned it, the AGOA agreement, and the relationship between South Africa and America, which after China is our biggest trade partner. Do you see the possibility of an improvement? How can we change it? Because it looks like AGOA is going to be discontinued for South Africa. Is there a possibility? Is there a chance? What chances are there to repair this?
That's a good question. I think the chances are zero as long as the ANC continues its propaganda blitz of misinformation, disinformation, and distorting. I mean, this nonsense about there are no widespread confiscations. Well, no one made that claim. Not even Trump made that claim. And they're the whites are not discriminated against. Then how do you explain 142 race-based laws? And the whole list goes on. And they keep insulting America's intelligence. And Trump is a smart guy. I mean, he may not be the most articulate. It's going to be the biggest, the best ever. It's going to be great. He isn't always the most articulate, but he is a smart guy. He didn't become a multi-billionaire because it was handed to him. He inherited $5 million and turned it into 10 billion at one point. Now he's worth a lot more than that, courtesy of his Truth Social. But can you repair it? Tell the ANC to shut up and tell News 24 and SABC and ENCA and IOL, the toilet paper record, and these other outlets to stop it. and stop being dishonest and dragging up leftists who are lying about the situation. That would make all the difference in the world. And then, be humble and tell the United States you're going to stop poking in the eye. But the ANC can't help itself. They are philosophically aligned with the Palestinian Liberation Organization, or now the Palestinian Authority, with Tehran, with Beijing, with Moscow, with Cuba. And these are all, for the most part, actors that work against American interests. And now, I think this is very telling, Isak, and this is why this is a problem. And this is another reason why I say it's the expropriation is the straw that broke the camel's back, but it's not the proximate cause of why this executive order came out. Very clearly here on the first page, what the South African media is conveniently ignoring for the most part. In addition, South Africa has taken aggressive positions towards the United States and its allies, as I've said, including accusing Israel, but not Hamas, of genocide in the International Court of Justice. They're mentioning that, but this is the part they keep forgetting about, and reinvigorating its relations with Iran to develop commercial, military, and nuclear arrangements. So what does that tell me? Well, without having access to classified information anymore, I suspect that we have some indication that maybe South Africa is cooperating with Iran's nuclear program. And without disclosing it, maybe that's supposition. I don't know. But my point here is that the ANC is working against the United States national interest. Why should we give you $500 million a year, South Africa, if you're going to treat us this way? So it's going to be a hard road to repair, Isak. But the first step would be some humility and just telling people in the ANC to shut their mouth.
It's retired Colonel Chris Wyatt that spoke to us. Chris, very much thank you for your time. Really appreciate it. Listen, I always tell people I speak Free State English. I believe you have been in the Free State. So you will probably know what Free State English is.
Well, most of my serious Afrikaner acquaintances, colleagues, and friends, those three categories, typically tell me they speak English in self-defense.
Thank you so much for your time.
You're very welcome.